Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Functional Longevity Podcast, where we give you insight on how to get fit, feel younger, live better. I'm your host, Chris Borda, best-selling author and owner of Y.E.S Fitness. Let me first thank you for taking time from your busy day to listen to what I have to say. Before I go any further, let me also thank our sponsor, Y.E.S Fitness. Most people lose the ability to enjoy life as they age. At Y.E.S Fitness, we help people age 40 plus get fit so they can live longer and enjoy those extra years doing the things they love to do. Some quick housekeeping here. If you'd like to get a timestamp or a transcript of today's broadcast, head on over to yesfitnessct.com. You'll see a drop down of podcasts. Click on that, and we'll give you access to any one of our now 381 episodes. You can also get this broadcast wherever podcasts can be found. Boost your longevity with PartiQular supplements. On the Functional Longevity Podcast, I've shared the importance of finding reliable supplements to support healthy aging. After searching for a reputable company I could trust, I finally found PartiQular, a U.S.-based brand that delivers on quality, science, and integrity. PartiQular offers a range of premium supplements, including an NMN for cellular energy and aging support, resveratrol to enhance heart health and brain health, and berberine for blood sugar balance and metabolism, and more, all crafted with care right here in the United States. I've been taking these products personally, and I've noticed a real improvement in my energy, focus, and overall vitality. So if you're ready to invest in your health, visit PartiQular.com. That's PartiQlar.com, and use the code YES15 at checkout to get 15% off your first order. Your health deserves the best. Start your journey with PartiQular today. Proven HIIT, high-intensity interval training, truths that end cortisol confusion. Today, we're tackling a question I hear constantly from women over 40. Is HIIT spiking my cortisol and preventing fat loss? Is high intensity bad for my hormones now? Should I stop intervals because of belly fat? If you've ever been told you have high cortisol and that you need to ditch intensity forever, this episode is for you. Because here's the truth. Cortisol isn't the villain. Context is. We're going to walk through what cortisol does, what the research says about high-intensity interval training, HIIT, H-I-I-T, and cortisol response. And then answer the big one. Do cortisol bumps from high-intensity interval training meaningfully block fat loss in women over 40? We'll also cover when HIIT can become a problem, because yes, there are scenarios where it backfires. So let's get right into this. Let's get to cortisol 101 for real life. Let's understand what cortisol is. It is a glucocorticoid hormone produced by adrenal glands. It follows a daily rhythm, generally higher in the morning, tapering down through the day. Most importantly, cortisol is how you meet demand. When you exercise, especially hard, cortisol helps mobilize fuel. There are times where cortisol is good because it helps mobilize fuel, especially during exercise. And it helps your body access glucose and fatty acids so you can actually do the work. That's not a hormonal emergency. That's physiology. A cortisol rise during a tough session is an acute stress response, short-lived, purposeful, and typically followed by a recovery back towards baseline. The fear people have is about chronic cortisol elevation, when your stress response says on too long, often tied to poor sleep, under recovery, under eating, physiological stress, and excessive training volume. So the key question becomes, does HIIT create a temporary normal cortisol spike, or does it push you into chronic overload? So let's take a look at what happens to cortisol after HIIT, after high intensity interval training session. And we're only going to talk about evidence here. A useful way to answer this is to look at studies that measure cortisol around HIIT sessions. A 2021 systematic review and meta-analysis on the acute hormonal response to HIIT found a consistent pattern. Cortisol raises immediately after HIIT sessions, then drops, often below baseline within a couple of hours, and returns to a baseline by about 24 hours. So it spikes up, drops, and hits back to a baseline in about 24 hours. That research is in PubMed. That's a big deal because it supports what we see in real life. For most reasonably healthy people, the cortisol spike is temporary, not something that stays elevated for days and locks fat on. Also, intensity doesn't automatically mean more stressed forever. In fact, there's research showing that exercise, particularly high intensity, can change how you respond to stress later. In a 2021 study found that exercise intensity can dampen the HPA axis response to a later physiological stressor or sociological stressor, suggesting a stress buffering effect. We know that how the body reacts to stress is extremely important. So in other words, training can improve stress resilience. Just did a podcast on it a few weeks ago. If recovery is handled correctly, So yes, HIIT can elevate cortisol in the short term. That is expected. The real question is whether that rise becomes chronic in your life. So let's talk about women, specifically women over 40. Women over 40 aren't fragile, but the recovery equation can change, especially through perimenopause and menopause, because sleep disruption, life stress, and shifting training tolerance are real. Now, cortisol research in women over 40 specifically is not as massive as we'd like, but we do have relevant evidence in women, including postmenopausal populations, showing that HIIT can be beneficial when appropriately dosed. That's the key word, appropriate. For example, a large meta-analysis looking at HIIT and body composition in women found that HIIT programs significantly reduce body weight, total fat mass, and abdominal fat loss overall. We see this all the time in the gym. And we train perimenopausal, menopausal women all the time. And in obese postmenopausal women, research continues to show meaningful metabolic improvements from structured HIIT-based interventions. Structured HIIT-based interventions. It needs to be prescribed correctly. So from a results standpoint, fat loss, waistline, metabolic health, HIIT is not automatically ineffective for women as they age. But the dose matters. So the fat loss question, right? Can HIIT cortisol spikes block results? Well, let's just address this myth head on. Here's what they say. HIIT raises cortisol. Cortisol blocks fat loss. So HIIT causes weight gain in women over 40. That's the myth that's out there. But here's a more accurate breakdown of what actually goes on. Number one, acute cortisol rises do not automatically prevent fat loss. The evidence on HIIT shows cortisol generally returns toward baseline within hours and normalized within a day. Fat loss is primarily driven by energy balance over time. How much you eat, how much you move, whether you can sustain it without compensating with cravings, reduced activity, or poor sleep, all affect fat loss. Where cortisol can matter is indirectly. Not because a workout ruined your hormones, but because chronic stress and hard training plus poor recovery can worsen your sleep, increase appetite and cravings, reduce your daily movement, NEAT, non-exercise activity thermogenesis, about 15% of the amount of calories you burn each day, increase soreness and fatigue, pushes you towards I need sugar and the couch mode. When those things pile up, fat loss can stall. So here's the honest answer. HIIT doesn't block fat loss because it raises cortisol, but poorly programmed HIIT can contribute to stress and recovery patterns and make fat loss harder. That's an important distinction. So when HIIT can backfire, the negative effects of HIIT, and here they are. There are negative outcomes if you treat HIIT like a personality trait, Potentially, issues show up when intensity is too frequent, too long, and paired with under recovery. Recovery. At the extreme end, there's overtraining syndromes, an under-recovered state associated with performance decline, mood disruption, and broader endocrine and immune effects. Now, most listeners aren't overtraining clinically, okay? But you can absolutely live in a gray zone or too much hard stuff, not enough recovery in that zone. Okay, in that zone, there's some common signs if this is happening. You have poor sleep or waking up tired, feeling run down, getting sick more often, decreased performance, elevated resting heart rate, persistent soreness, irritability or anxiety. These are all signs of overtraining. And here's a big one for women over 40. If HIIT is layered on top of low calories, low carbs, high life stress, and poor sleep, it can feel like it's not working because the recovery cost is too high. All those things, okay, affect your recovery. Also, exercise modality matters. Long duration, higher intensity aerobic work can elevate cortisol more than resistance training of similar duration. So stacking long interval sessions plus lots of cardio can be bigger stress load than people realize. Long cardio, put a gun to my head. They think more is always better. That's not the case. Harder is always better. Not the case. So yes, there's a way to do HIIT that makes you feel worse. That's not because cortisol is evil. It's because the total system load is mismatched to your recovery capacity. The sweet spot, okay? Here's the sweet spot, how to program HIIT for women over 40 plus. And here's the approach I like for longevity-focused women over 40. We like to keep HIIT to 1 to 2 sessions a week. For most people, if you're doing some strength training, you're getting enough work and NEAT involved in your life, that's plenty to get benefits without recovery debt a couple times a week. Keep the true hard work short. So you can do interval training in as little 16 minutes, 15 minutes. We go 30 minutes at the gym. You don't want to be suffering for 30 minutes. When we do interval training, we do it correctly, okay? This is going to freak out. Use a heart rate monitor. That is the best way to do this. If you don't know how to use a heart rate monitor, get a hold of me, please. I will gladly teach you how to use it, okay? But here's some examples. And if any of my clients listen to this, they're going to freak out because you could do something like 8 sessions, 8 cycles, 8 works, 30 seconds hard and 90 seconds easy. You're going to say, 90 seconds is way too long for easy. No, it's not. We want to make sure we recover so we can work really hard. Or we can do 10, 40 seconds hard and 80 seconds easy. So we lengthened it a little bit, shortened a little bit. You could maybe do 6 1 minute hard, 2 minutes easy. Now, 1 minute is a long time to go hard. But my point here is it doesn't have to be forever. It just needs to be hard, and you need to recover between your session. The best way to do it is with a heart rate monitor. Just a fixed work to rest ratio is not as efficient. Period. Bottom line, research shows. So place HIIT on days you can recover, not the night after 5 hours of sleep, not the day after a crushing leg session, not during the week where your life is exploding. Let's prioritize strength training. If you're choosing between more HIIT and more strength, strength wins for long-term body composition, bone function resilience. Strength training, strength training, strength training. Fuel it like an adult, not like a punishment. If you're under eating and doing HIIT, that's where the stress story becomes real. Protein matters. Are you getting enough protein? How many women do better with some carbs around HIIT so the session doesn't become a nervous system breakdown? So you need carbs. You definitely need protein. Carbs are not evil. Use recovery metrics that matter. Track your sleep quality, your morning energy, desire to train, resting heart rate, and whether performance is trending up or down. All things that are going to tell you if you're getting enough recovery. If HIIT leaves you energized and improved, keep it. If it leaves you wrecked and inflamed, reduce dose or swap the modality out. So here's the bottom line. So does HIIT raise cortisol? Yes, temporarily. It goes back to baseline. Does that temporary raise automatically block fat loss in women over 40? No, it does not. Can HIIT have negative effects? Yes. When recovery is ignored and intensity becomes excessive. For most women over 40, the winning formula is this: strength training 2 times a week, maybe 3 until you hit 50, 55, then you only need 2. HIIT as a targeted tool 1 to 2 times a week. I strongly recommend a heart rate monitor. I think they're $50, well worth the money spent. Plenty of low intensity movement. Low intensity, that's our NEAT, our non-exercise activity thermogenesis. When we talk about 10,000 steps in a day, this is what we're talking about. Make sure we're moving. We're not sitting on the couch. That is 15% of the calories you burn each day. Exercise is 5. So if you're going to do anything, make sure you're getting that low intensity movement in. And recovery and that low intensity helps with cortisol and blood insulin. And recovery treated as a strategy, not as a slogan. Put it right in there with what you're doing with your training plan. If you want, I can also give you 2 complete HIIT templates, one for premenopause and one for postmenopause, built around fat loss recovery and joint-friendly options. Just get a hold of me. Whether it's a bike, row, or walking incline, plus a red flag checklist. Get a hold of me. I'd be happy to help you out with this, because I know it's a struggle for women. I know they see this all the time. And I had a client ask me about it. I had a client ask me to do this today, to dig down into the research to make sure that what she's seeing on social media is correct, and what she's seeing on social media actually is not correct. I would strongly recommend you to do some high intensity interval training 1 to 2 times a week. 8 to 20, 8 to 30 minutes. Use a heart rate monitor. You'll be all set. Keep your recovery in line, and I think you'll have success. So that's it. If you found this interesting and you know somebody that's had the same question needs to be answered, pass it along to them. Always hit the like button if you please. And I'll be back next week with more information on how to get fit, feel younger, live better. Thanks for watching.